Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to the new and refreshed podcast known as It Is Time to Deal with the Pain, presented by Healing Brothers. I am one of your co-hosts, Brandon Jones, and I'm joined by the legendary Sam Simmons. How you doing today, Sam?
Uh, I'm good. As if you didn't notice, I'm out of the basement.
Yes, you have a new background. You're stepping your game up, man.
This is a new background, stepping my game up. What's wrong with you, man? Well,
It
this
looks good. The
this is the
lighting's good.
office. This
It's
is the
crisp.
office, huh?
I said the lighting's good. It's crisp. Everything looks good, man. Is it not as
Yeah, well,
comfortable as your chair though? Are you missing the chair?
yeah. Yeah, folks might find a problem with that. I ran into somebody who I've been communicating with who lives in Florida, right?
Hmm.
And he's here in town, and I ran into him on Friday, and when I walked in the room, his head went up like this because he's a lot shorter than I thought he was. He says,
Mm.
he says you a whole lot bigger than I thought you were." I said, "You know what? Somebody else told me that." He says, "It's that chair, man. That chair.
Right.
Look, that's a big chair.
Yeah.
Make you look like you little bitty dude in that chair." Yeah, I said, "Well, that chair fit two people.
Yeah.
That was a custom chair I ordered a few years ago. You know,
Yeah.
just in case I had, you know how men be joking about when they're married, they got to sleep, and they might have to sleep on the couch or whatever.
Couch. Yeah.
Shit, yeah, I
Right.
ain't sleeping on nobody's couch. You know, and I'm, shoot, every now and then I need to doze off. Just push that button and
Yeah.
just lean on back, lean back,
I need to get one of those myself, man. I need to get
lean
one of those
back.
myself.
And
It's
then
time.
the computer's right there. Put a little timer on. Wipe the sleep from my eyes, put my glasses on. Now I'm on. So
Yeah.
I'm on Zoom so much.
Battery recharged.
Yes. So now that I'm trying to you know do something, make it look a little different. I figured I finally straighten up my office and put up some curtains, so and that kind of thing, and let folks know that I don't always live in the basement. You know what I
Mm,
mean? So
yeah, man. Yeah.
this is what you see today.
I'm glad you decided to rise from the bottom to the top to come to the next level of the home, because it leads into our conversation today as we're going to talk about the narrative around Black folks and Black men. We have a clip that we want to also show following up from our conversation last week, referencing Martin Luther King Day. I mean, it was the day before Martin Luther King Day, day after his birthday. We had our podcast. How did your week go this week, Sam? As far as Martin Luther King, did you see anything that just set you off, or anything, or good things that were like that's a good way to remember King and and push his legacy? How was your week this week?
My week was actually pro- productive for me. Like I said, in terms of Martin Luther King um, day or week or what we were doing. Then nothing, nothing different really. Everybody got their view. You got the thing. The the racist individuals in the country doubled down on quoting Martin
Mm,
Luther King any chance they could get. Which I found amusing. You want to quote him and then put in policies that are affecting voting rights in a very negative way,
mm,
and affecting people of color in negative ways, and then quote Martin Luther King at the same time. I found that sacrilegious. But in terms of the community, community pretty much did the same thing. I also had this conversation um, on Friday on my radio show as well about, the question was, what would Martin Luther King say if he was here right now, right, in 2022, with everything going on, with COVID and voting rights in question in some states, and even in terms of violence in the community, what would he
Mhm.
say? And one of the things that I ran into over the weekend was an interview with Clarence Benjamin Jones, I believe is his name, who was his actual speechwriter. And the
Mhm.
question it was asked of him. Actually, he wrote a book, I think, called "What Would Martin Do?" Right, and listening to him was interesting to say the least.
Mhm.
Which brings up this question, do we need a new narrative in terms of what we're talking about, in terms of the community? Um, and after we asked that question, I thought a little bit more about when we talk about Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King's approach was more about strategy, uh, and how to get, a system's attention, right? The whole nonviolence was a strategy, right? If you got
Right.
a violent regime, if you deal with them non-violently, um, you make their violence obvious, right?
Mhm.
Really was the strategy. And his daughter talked about that over the weekend as well. I do believe his strategy was starting to be adjusted at the time of his killing,
Mhm.
where he was broadening his strategy to include other issues on top, because all the issues are held up by civil rights, right? People's right
Right.
to be treated fair, to exist, and that kind of stuff. So, Poor People's March, looking at Vietnam, thinking about how the percentage of black men. I was, when you look back on that, I think people would be surprised to look at the percentage of black men who were fighting in Vietnam War, and how they were put in the front lines, and the kind of things that was going on, and when them brothers came back to the States, in the 70s, what kind of devastation they dealt with. So, um, because one of the things when we were talking about the narrative, that there's a narrative in our community, of a part of our community, that really sounds like, at times sound, very victimy,
Yeah.
poor us, right? And as much as we want to talk about one, part, talk about how resilient we are, how do you balance that, right?
Mhm.
And how do you balance it internally
Mhm.
in the community? So,
Mhm.
uh, yeah, that's a long answer to your question, I think.
Got it. Yeah. And hopefully we can dive into some of that victimy behavior mindset and how it shows up. I think one of the things that ends up happening is that a lot of times that victimy language is said to us by people who are not or people who are black, sometimes both people who are not black and black, and we don't realize what people are saying, and it really is insulting. For example, when we had now President Joe Biden, when he was on his circuit right before the elections, and he was at the Breakfast Club, and when he told Charlemagne, like, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. Like, it's like those types of insulting statements to people. It's like we can't think, we can't do anything besides vote for you because you're a Democratic presidential candidate. Like, it's things like that. I feel like contribute to this mentality that we end up being helpless or victim, or to a point where we have this victimhood mentality. But we'll dive into that as we go. And I think Clarence Jones is going to actually share some information that kind of highlights this even further. Do you want to spin the clip?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let's rock and roll. So here's a clip, and then just let me know when you want me to stop it and you want to chime in, Sam. We don't have to run the whole thing. all in one play. All right. Can you see that?
Yeah.
What would Martin say? What would Martin Luther King say about what's going on in the United States today when it comes to race relations, voting rights, what's happened to the Republican Party?
He would not understand why the country, school boards, everybody's getting upset about references to slavery. The other thing he would say, Black lives matter. Black lives have always mattered. Always mattered. The challenge has been for us to get the majority of society to recognize and to respect that. He also, coming down on controversial issues, he said, what are these people talking about? They don't want the police. You cannot run a society on lawlessness. Cannot do it, okay? We just got to understand they're not all police people are bad people. I think that's what he would say. I saw what happened in Birmingham in summer. And nobody is going to convince me that America is incapable. I don't believe that white people are incapable of rising above an historical upbringing of racism. I don't believe that.
What do you say to Republicans who, if they hear what you just said and would say, how dare you say that white Americans are imbued with racism? How dare you say that sort of thing? Because that's the conversation that's happening in the country now.
What country are they living in? What do you mean, how dare I say? I live in a world of facts, you know? Not alternative facts, facts. I mean, I didn't put a clause in the Constitution called the 3/5 clause. There was a decision called the Dred Scott decision. I didn't make that up in the Supreme Court. I didn't make up Plessy v. Ferguson. These things actually happened. The fact that there was a period of time in which the country was dominated by the mentality of people who owned slaves. That's not my opinion.
The nation has been through a lot of trials, and by trials I mean literal trials.
Yes.
The Derek Chauvin trial for the murder of George Floyd.
Right.
The Kyle Rittenhouse trial. And then you have the three murderers of Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. What, to your mind, what do those events say about where we are as a country? Are we pulling apart?
Yes. On the issue of race, we are pulling apart. And there's several contributing factors to that. I think that the leaders, some of the civil rights leaders, got themselves in the crosshair, the wrong direction on the question of the police. You can say that Black Lives Matter, and you can call out where it should be called out, racist police conduct. But I get the impression that a large part of the white community believes that Black people are against the police, but they don't want police. I get that, okay? And as a matter of fact, regrettably, my anger is that civil rights leaders seem to be caught in a quandary. They seem to have lost their balance. Why do I say that? Because how can you be a major civil rights leader in this country and permit the killing fields that takes place in African American communities? And they're not white people coming in and killing black people, they're black people. Mm. This is not to excuse the obvious instances of racist killing of black people by other white people. But what's going on in Washington, what's going on in Chicago, and Washington, D.C., and Atlanta, it's a travesty.
So, Dr. Jones.
All right. Any comments, Sam? Thoughts before we continue?
Well, there might be, some folks that might think, where did that old Negro go now? But he's on point, in terms of, the whole idea of both and. It goes back to that both and, even though he didn't put it that way, you can't let systems off the hook, period.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, we can't let our own selves off the hook in terms of addressing some of these issues within our own community, which is probably a lot of times emotionally probably more difficult to address at the same time. But if you go on just a little bit further, and then we can, move on with our discussion.
Okay.
Jones, now what you just said is something that I hear as pushback from Republicans who say, why are you talking about, you're spending a whole lot of time talking about law enforcement killing African Americans. Why aren't you talking about Chicago?
But we have to not be so self-conscious, okay? That doesn't excuse the Republican-based legislative, racist-based legislative acts to not protect black people. We're going to leave it to the Kevin McCarthy's and so forth. We're going to leave our children's fate. We're going to leave our children's fate to other people. I don't want to hear that. Any black person who says they love their black community and sits on their hands and sees what's going on in the black community of blacks killing other blacks. Okay? Now, I don't care if somebody says, I saw Clarence Jones on television. Okay? I think this brother has lost his mind. I'm just speaking truth to power. I'm not excusing the racist actions of other people that in our black community. But you can't be a male, you can't be a father, you can't be a parent and see your children in black communities being shot down in the killing fields. I am absolutely convinced that what I just said to you earlier, that's exactly what he would say.
We can end it.
Listen to me. I'm absolutely convinced.
You want to end it right there?
So,
what are your thoughts?
Well, I it's always hard to, kind of think about what somebody else would think, but I think he's right. I think he's right. And again, back to how do we do a both and? And because right now one thing that we have realized, even though when Martin was doing nonviolence and that kind of stuff, we're at a time where you can't embarrass white leadership. They're embarrassing all on their own, right? And so waiting for white folks to do the right thing is not the issue. But at the same time, not taking a full leadership piece, even the tough piece of leadership, in terms of holding your own accountable in a compassionate way. See, we know that the system is not going to show us no compassion. Even our so-called friends are not always going to show us compassion when we talk about the system. You know what I'm saying? That was proven great deal by our so-called, when people used to make the little joke about Clinton, our first black president. He didn't show a lot of compassion in the crime bill when it came to black folks, right? And so I don't even know if they think we deserve compassion. I don't even know if we think we deserve compassion sometimes, right? Because we'll do an emotional swing back and forth, get mad at certain segments of our own black community, and then want to go both feet attack that individual, and won't even do that for our white counterparts. And then the next minute is, oh, you can't do that to us, when somebody else do the same thing. So the inconsistency of some of our approaches is actually in some ways makes sense to me when you're talking about dealing with such an emotional kind of response to around the ideal that you're in a country that at times think or treat you, in parts of it that believes that you are less than human. I mean, was it McConnell yesterday was talking about voting rights, and he said, well, I don't think voting rights for blacks or African Americans is any different than other Americans. Oh, we ain't all Americans? we ain't all Americans? And so there's always been them and us in the conversation. But sometimes we will and we should understand that. And so how do we do what we need to do for us? Because the only people gonna save us is us. And that includes different kind of strategies in dealing with the white systems. That means strategies on how do we compassionately hold people accountable in our community. The whole ideal in terms of systems is throw away the key kind of deal. Well, we know that the key can't be thrown away. There's not enough prisons, enough space to throw away the key, and the whole thing, I locked them up. But they gave it a good try. They done gave it a good try, right? And so now, when you were in responding emotionally to these different kind of pieces, where you go from one extreme to the other, don't do anybody no good, and it definitely don't do us no good. How do we build a foundation and have a rhetoric of what I call compassion accountability? It's like, look, we need to figure out what's really the strategy and what is really going on. Even with the voting rights, we bring up, when we talk about what we got to explain things clearer. One of the things that, again, the Republicans or the white racist factions of America, because see, the white racist factions are not just Republicans. See, that's why I can separate the two. They're both Republicans and Democrats. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Very much so.
so when I say racist factions, it can include all of them. Okay, but the issue is your strategy got to be built from how do we empower us to deal with them, right? And part of empowering us goes back to why we even started this this podcast, is really talk about the emotional and spiritual and psychological effects of this fight and dealing with the repercussions of it, so that barrier doesn't get in the way of us being clear-minded in terms of the fight. So, like, for example, voting rights. A lot of times people bring up this, the quickest thing they bring up is voter ID. You know, voter ID is voter ID. It's deeper than voter ID, right? It's comes down to what kind of voter ID that you're gonna allow to be important. Some states you can just have to have your latest utility bill, long as it match up with your address that you have listed as, you know, on your registration, right? And so we got to be more meticulous, and it's hard to be meticulous when you fighting from behind or fighting from a victim kind of standpoint. It's hard to be meticulous when your strategy is all over the damn place, right? When it's hard to be meticulous when your conversation says, "Look what they doing to me, the poor," and like it or not, anytime we make the most of the focus, especially on political things, like, you know, the voting is going to affect, you know, Black people and people of color and you know, other disenfranchised folks. And so what happens is even within our so-called folks who are our allies, some, when they sit back, they hear like, okay, what are they talking about? What are they talking about? They mentioned that there were more Black folks that voted. Well, the issue is when somehow you got to, I mean, as much as we wanted to be, it is about us. But we got to do a better job to let folks know that everybody's affected by things. See, because it's always been, they never recognize things that affect us is going to affect them. Because again, back to the us and them, right? How do we do a better strategy to let folks know this is about us, all of us? A lot of this, some of this stuff is about all of us. Republicans don't want, their biggest thing is they don't want a whole bunch of people voting, because if a whole bunch of people vote, they lose. They lose. We get a whole bunch of young people voting. We get a whole bunch of Latinas voting. We get a whole bunch of Asians voting. You know, and the thing is they lose. So they're really attacking the full spectrum, because again, we help people get over the hump, but our voting block is not as big as some of these other voting blocks. And some of these other voting blocks are slowly going against us because they look at us as whiners. Other cultures look at us as whiners. Why they keep whining? It can't be that bad, right? Because they have a different view, and I'm not just talking about you know, Asian cultures, Latina culture. I'm talking about Black immigrants as well, right? And so the thing is, and then on top of that, with us, you know, we ain't going to vote unless you pat us on the head and then we vote, right? We pat us on the head and we might vote. Like Black folks are already talking about they ain't gonna vote in 20 this year, because they felt disenfranchised by what just currently happened. Well, okay, is there some excuses to vote? I was surprised about how many black folks didn't vote until the first time until Obama ran.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you are not able to do or strategize with some of the tools that you already have, because if you don't want to use the tools you already have, and then you don't have an answer to replace those tools, then what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? It's like when folks say, well, the system is racist, it's unfair, and whatever, blah, and we don't want them, like recently with the carjacking, we don't want them to lock up our kids like they were before, and our poor kids, they don't have nothing else to do and all that. So what do you do? And they get quiet. What do you do? Well, we can have some community responses. Okay, so we've been having community responses for a long time. Maybe we need to adjust some of them bad boys too.
Right.
Because some of them community responses are not compassionate accountability. They're over the top compassion or actually complicit accountability. How about that?
Not accountable at all.
Right.
Oh man.
If I can't make you accountable, at least to show the hell up, then if all I ask you, at least all you got to do is show up, and you can't do that. And I can sit here. Oh, that old Negro don't know what he's talking about. Look at that beard on that old Negro. Look at man, I make old look good. But look at that old Negro talking that noise. But see, I got experience that it does work. You can make folks who ain't never been accountable in their lives for a lot of stuff other than waking up. Because how was your week? Well, I was blessed. I woke up this morning. Oh my God.
Was that it?
Yeah. And you can do that without beating folks up.
Yeah.
Our community knows how to be punished. We don't know how to be loved. And we don't even know how to do that with our own community. If you speak up differently, like, Clarence, he's old, he don't care. That's the best thing about being old and black. You just don't care. You don't like what I say. But I've been old and black for a long time, because I've been old and black since I've been 35, if you go by that, because I ain't care. That's why I'm kind of on the outside. And being on the outside has been very successful for me, right? People don't accuse me of taking any sides. And so the thing is folks might not have liked what he said, but the interesting thing is when he started talking about the community responsibility in the community, about violence in our community, you notice he only talked about men.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem.
Why?
That's a problem.
Say more.
Well, the thing is we always want to put all the responsibility on black men, right? And when we do that, it backfires on our community, right? Mm-hmm. It ends up breaking up a great partnership that we could have. It minimizes the work of black women.
Okay.
The thing is right now, if we ever needed a partnership between black men and black women, and both of us can respect each other and respect what we can bring to the party, we would be a lot further ahead than a whole bunch of other communities, or at least even with some of them. Because there's some communities that work fairly well with in partnership, especially when it comes to their kids.
I would say every community but us.
Well,
in this
you know,
country.
they all got variations, okay?
In this
They're
country.
variations because there's sexism in other cultures, right?
Yeah, but
Right.
there's better collaboration too.
Right. And so the thing is and again, that goes back to that victimy stuff. Everybody's a victim. Go online, you got black men groups, they're victim of black women, and black women are victim of black men. And unfortunately, the problem, one of the issues is it ends up being trying to figure out who's more a victim than the other. And when we come down to physical abuse, for a long time, it was, you know, black men, you know, abusing black women, and black women thinking that they were supposed to take it. Now we got this younger generation of black women who don't watch their aunties and their grandmas and all of them put up with some old Negro insecurity black men. Shoot, they ain't trying to hear that either. So you go from one extreme to the other. So we got all these extremes, right? And there's good points on each of the extremes. How do we find a happy middle? And that's where the compassion and accountability comes in at. But you can't find a happy middle when you are emotionally all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional stability is important, but it's hard to be that when you deny the trauma that really fuels your emotional instability. Because we have been traumatized.
Right. So given that trauma and given that divide that we have between black male and black females, what does accountability look like for black males and black females? Is it something different? Is it the same from your perspective? What does accountability look like?
Well, the thing is how do you show yourself a little bit of compassion and accountability? Okay. You know, because if my self-esteem is based on you acting a certain way towards me, that's a losing proposition. That's a losing proposition. You know, and there's variations on both sides, right? And we both and all of us got history in terms of, you know, if we want to hold on to something long enough, we can come up with our history that says this is what you did, or this is what my mama did, or my mama didn't do, or my daddy did, or my daddy didn't do. Okay. Because see, when we start talking about that trauma thing, we it's more than just now. We got to go back. Those missing pieces. How do we make ourselves whole enough to be able to deal with another person? We got missing pieces emotionally. One of the things that we have held on to that we can handle anything. Is it that we can handle anything, or is it that we're still here after everything done happened? There's a very big difference.
Sure.
Because the thing is can we have we handled everything emotionally? Right? We in the moment, we got an option for in the moment. You know, we brag about a mama being able to feed 10 kids off of one chicken. Man, black folks know how to cut up a chicken in a way that, you know, you go to the store, you get quarters. Quarters? I wish a black woman would cut up a chicken in quarters when I was growing up. You know? People think there's only 8 pieces of chicken. No, there's actually 10. If you get a black woman from down south, she know how to cut the chicken up and actually more than 10, 12 pieces. You got 2 breasts, you cut them in half. That's that. There you go. You cut the back out of the chicken on both sides of the breast. Now you got 2 more pieces. You cut that back in half. Shoot, man. Yeah, as a people, we have been resilient in the way we have handled things in the moment. And some of those techniques we use to handle things in the moment, we're still trying to use them same old ass techniques right now. So how do we evolve so we can thrive off of our accomplishments. We don't even thrive off of the accomplishments we say we made.
Yeah.
I know we tired of fighting. We are absolutely tired, but we don't even take time to do that. And then people who take time to do that, we get mad at them. What you so happy about?
That's sad.
I mean, I live a fairly good life, and the reason I live a fairly good life is I have boundaries that I hold for both black and white people, and my family, and my wife, right? And I even hold boundaries for myself, and will function fine by myself if I have to. And don't blame nobody else if it don't go right, because I still have to decide to let you in my life. So when we're talking about what do black men and black women do, black men, I work with black men on a regular basis. The biggest thing I have to do with them is quit putting all of who you are in black women's hands, or women's hands in general. We can take the color out, because they ain't all, they got issues with more than just black women.
Sure.
You putting all your responsibility in you putting all the responsibility who you are in a black woman's hands.
So the whole idea of being a protector, provider, and all that's just handed over, you're saying?
Well, no. They think they're doing this. They think that. Well, put it like this: they think they're doing some of that, right?
Right.
But when they're not able to do it, they don't blame themselves. They blame black women.
She's holding me back.
She won't let me be head of the house. Well, Negro, you ain't got nothing. Or you got a good job and you got and you're making good money, but some of your decisions are shaky. Can we do that together? Or we have all this baggage where we can't trust each other because we don't know how to trust. Trust take balance. But if I'm bringing all my distrust from the past, that don't just include relationships, those are, but the relationship with parents, with community, right? Think about it. If you come out of a black community and all your trauma is with black people, but then you're always told is the white folks who are your problem, because the system we live within a system, and we live with a system that is biased and racist. But your trauma is all with your major trauma is all with your relationship with other black people, and nobody's having a conversation about that.
Right.
And ain't telling you how to best do with that. Then you're emotionally all over the place. That's why you have such difficulty with a lot of black folks who even call themselves going to church, don't know how to show forgiveness. Believe it, if I forgive you, because our families play that okie doke on us.
Right.
If you forgive me, you would, if you really forgive me, you will do this and this and this, right? No, we have to really step back and really challenge some of that stuff, right? If we family, we got to always be down, even if you're doing silly stuff. I'm going to be there for you. No. Balance. So again, compassion, accountability starts with us. I can be accountable and compassionate to quit being so hard on myself because everybody around me is so. We look. I mean, we're so hard on each other. We can be so hard, and it's so much easier to focus on external things. Right? And then we got set up with the okey doke. The only way we can get some money is be the poor downtrodden individuals, because and start up some nonprofit and beg somebody for some money.
And
I
get
got
mad.
2 nonprofits. They ain't got no money in them. Well, they got enough money to keep their accounts open. I just don't know how to beg. Nah, I ain't broke. Could be better off, but I just, man, I mean, I work for nonprofits. Every February, they would bring all the black staff out and have them speak and represent the organization, and they would ask us, in your department, do you have any stories with your clients of successes? And I looked at them and says, I'm not doing that. What do you mean you ain't doing that? You ain't parading my clients around on no stage. You're not doing that. So that you can get money that you don't even share with my department.
Wow.
And on top of that, when it ain't February, you ain't even talking to me worth a damn. So sometimes when we do this victimy stuff, we set ourselves up to be victims. I ain't no victim. Now, am I, could I be victims of circumstances? I guess I can. But can't do it. Can't do it.
Right.
And so I don't know. I mean, but I see there's some power and some success we could have. I believe if we ask the hard questions internally as a community, we have a probably an unfair responsibility, but it's ours to do both and. Mm-hmm. We cannot let the system off the hook, but we can't let us off the hook either. We can't. If we say we love each other as much as we say we do, I can't. So again, when we're talking about this thing that we talk about around trauma, and I say this all the time, is we do. Once my clients understand what trauma is, you believe it or not, trauma is so ingrained in our culture, we don't even understand what trauma is. Half the time. And once they understand what trauma is, then we ask the question, now that you understand trauma, tell me where have you experienced the most dramatic and traumatic trauma experiences in your life, and were they black or white? And most of the time they say black.
Right.
And then the question is, what do you do with that? What do you do with that? When you don't know how to forgive, you're scared to be honest. You're scared to set boundaries. You're scared to say no. Now you'll say hell no to the extreme, but just no. And be brave enough to live with it. Because it's a lonely road initially. Lonely. And the other thing is we're codependent people. We're codependent people, and it makes sense. We as a collective, we were all in it together when it came down to chattel slavery. It was all of us. You black, you in it. Even when you felt like you were free, you was in it in some kind of level.
Right.
So all into each other, no matter how funky your personality, how funky you are, we all in this together, and I gotta tolerate your funkiness for us to make it. Nah, I ain't got to do that no more. And my babies ain't got to do that no more. So we're at a critical time. And see what's interesting. I was thinking about this. You know, we got this new area of the good. You know, this new white folks. That do you understand that a lot of the white folks who are involved in like the politics and showing up at school board meetings and that kind of stuff. There was a whole group of white folks who had nothing to do with politics. You know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Had nothing to do with the government. Matter of fact, they're like, if they leave me alone, I leave them alone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that Trump woke all those white folks up. And those are the white folks that did what they, you know, they keep talking about the bougie folks ignored the middle of the country. They did. Because white folks, you know, shoot, man, white folks don't necessarily like other white folks. What do you know? You know, they have different rules for other white folks. You know, these backward white folks who look into, you know, them folks have been following conspiracies all along. Them folks didn't just start building rooms, safety rooms, and there's a whole cult of them folks. The ironic part is we got a whole group of folks in the black community who just existed and didn't vote and didn't believe that, you know, the government would, you know, what I'm gonna be about. They're gonna do what they're gonna do. But they woke up all them folks who didn't read, who listen to talk news. But, you know, we got a few minutes, 6 minutes or so left. I'd lost on time, and you know,
it's okay.
You know, and I don't know if people want to hear me talk. They, you know, because you didn't get to say much. You know,
no, it's fine. You said enough.
What about the little dude? Do he get to talk? The little dude.
The only thing I would add to what you were saying is, for us, it's not just about the balance. It's also about vulnerability and being comfortable enough to be in a space of being vulnerable so you can move forward. You can't build boundaries without being vulnerable. That's my belief. You have to be able to take a bit of a risk in order for yourself to get to a space where your boundaries can be created. Now, the way that I define boundaries is your expectation of how you treat yourself and your expectation of how others should treat you. And it's an engagement that you go through. And most folks don't even know what their boundaries are until somebody has crossed that line. And then they're backtracking, attempting to communicate what their boundaries are. It's important for folks to do that work and understand what your boundaries are so that you can articulate them to other people in a healthy way. And I'm going to share my screen real quick to show this quick pyramid. So I think it's important when we talk about boundaries so people can know what this is. So this is what we call the vulnerability hierarchy. And if you look at it right here at the bottom, it starts with who? It starts within yourself. That's the first place of being vulnerable. Starts is at that basis with yourself. What you were saying earlier, Sam. If you don't start with yourself, none of this other stuff is going to even make a difference. Then you move up to with most trusted people. Then you move up to a few more trusted people. Then you can look at within your own personal community, and then within the community, the wider community, then ultimately the world. We're stuck, just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're stuck at that very bottom of the pyramid where our basic needs, our physiological and our safety needs are not met. And since we're stuck down there, we're stuck with ourselves. We just exist, like you were saying. We are at a pivotal time in society where just existing is not going to cut it. We got robots, AI, technology, all these things coming, and those things are competing with our ability to even be necessary within the society. And if we want to have a community, if we want to have a Black community, we have no choice but to get together, because what's also happening is what we call admixture, where we're just blending in to other groups. So if people really want to have a Black community and things like that, we are beyond time. It is beyond time to deal with the pain. because the pain that we've gone through in the past and the pain that's here right now, we have to address both simultaneously. And it's not just what the system's done, it's also what has happened within ourselves. So that'll be the piece that I'll add to what you were saying. I don't know if you got any feedback from what I said, but I mean, you did a sermon today. I just let you cook, man.
Well, I want you to kind of, the few minutes we got, parse out what you mean by vulnerability, because what I've learned that there's words that we don't always use in our community. We might have heard them, but we don't fully. We got to make what I've learned. We got to make it make sense to us.
Yeah. So vulnerability is the ability to be uncomfortable when you feel you're in an environment or situation that is uncertain. So you can be like, for example, I know many Black people in neighborhoods that they don't want to be vulnerable. I mean, literally, we say things, we don't think about what we're saying. But right now, a very common saying amongst plenty of younger Black folks is don't get caught lacking. Right? That lacking piece is the vulnerability. That's what they're saying when they say that, is you can't get caught lacking. And for folks who don't know what that means, is you need to have your gun on you and at the ready, no matter what happens. So if you're pumping gas at the gas station, you better have that pistol ready, because if you don't, somebody might draw up on you and then you getting hit. Now, that's unfortunate that we have to live in a society where 16 and 14-year-olds think like that. But that's what it is, that level of vulnerability, because if in our communities, vulnerability is almost simultaneous with death. Like if you are vulnerable, you will die. And that's how we operate. And we've been operating like this for a long time. There's even historical trauma pieces connected to that vulnerability. This is when your mama used to, and grandmama and them way back in the 30s, then the 40s, and even in the 20s, when they would say, well, I'm going to be harder on you because this world's going to be hard on you. And when you go down to the market or you go into town, you need to be careful because you might not come back home. That is the level of vulnerability and fear that we've had ingrained in us epigenetically over time. And now that vulnerability has been reversed. It's not just the outside forces, it's also internal what we have to deal with. We are more likely to be harmed by ourselves than we are from groups outside of ourselves. And the system will continue to operate throughout that dysfunction. So our vulnerability when it comes to building better relationships with one another, answering and asking those tough questions, mean, are you willing to go into that space where you're willing to be honest, like you said earlier, about what is going on? And if you do the exercise of making the white and black list, and that black list, it ultimately ends up longer than the white list, are you vulnerable enough? Are you willing enough to be in that space of discomfort to deal with the truth? And once we're able to get there, I think we can move forward. And when we move forward, there's going to be other moments of vulnerability and uncomfortableness that show up. And a lot of that deals with our male-female dynamics. A lot of that deals with our accountability to our children. I mean, these kids that are out here, doing these home invasions and these car robberies, these are kids, man. They got parents. They got brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, grandparents. These are kids for the most part doing this. And who's accountable for these children? We all should feel some accountability to them, because if we really say we're a community and we come from kings and queens, we failed our young people.
On that note, we wish everybody a good day.
It is time to deal with the pain. We will be back next week, 3 p.m. Central Time. Be sure to share this episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel. This is a Healing Brothers production. Peace.